Hey everyone, and welcome to another discussion video for She-Hulk. This time, episode 8, 8 of 9, as we're rounding out the rest of the season. We are the Uncanny J-Men. Every week we come to you to discuss a Marvel show that has come out on Disney Plus, and we've been doing this every week for She-Hulk, and we're getting close to the end here. So
Yeah, next week is the final episode.
we'll be back next week to talk about it again.
Yeah,
And of course, this is discussing the show. Spoilers for everything that has been played up till through episode 8. And I'm sure we're going to be talking a good bit about what we expect to see in episode 9, the finale of the first season of She-Hulk. So let's get into it. What do you think of this episode? Or like, what? Let's start from the beginning, I guess. Or is like,
I just have to say, we finally got the Daredevil episode.
finally got it after all those weeks and weeks of waiting.
It was such an anticipated part of the promotions leading up to the show and leading into it that we knew it was coming at some point. I thought it happened before episode 8, the penultimate episode. It looks like this is his one episode since he went back to New York. But I liked it. I liked having it there, having him there, having the banter between the two of them and fighting while discussing law. I loved that whole idea. I thought that was great.
I mean, I would love to watch an entire show of them two together.
Yeah.
Fighting crime, law. Like, I mean, I will say this: we've talked on and off this whole season so far about like, is this a law movie? Is it a superhero movie? Is it a life movie? This is the first time I feel like real law was talked about in the
Yeah.
entire show.
Yeah.
Daredevil just does it so well. It was great. So like just kind of go back a little bit. So we got Frogman.
Frogger. Leapfrog.
Thank you.
Leapfrog.
We got LeapFrog, which that's right, because I made fun of him in my head, being LeapFrog, which is like the learning thing for children.
Okay.
He's a child.
I went with the video game Frogger in my head. I'm like, yeah, he's just a frog hopping across places, getting himself beaten up.
It doesn't seem like he has powers per se, just he's rich and has a super suit.
Yeah. Yeah, and yet more indication of the world we are in with the MCU. And I mentioned this before. I think that's my favorite thing coming out of the show is being able to see what the world has become in the MCU. That there are heroes everywhere, and now we're seeing there are vigilantes everywhere who are trying to be heroes because they really exist. The means are there. It's not like anyone who has the wealth of Batman can become Batman in the MCU. I know Batman's DC. There's an analogy, but essentially, yeah. If he's wealthy, that's a superpower. Bring on the super suit. It's an interesting world that we're seeing here.
I mean, it just goes to show, though, the kind of difference between LeapFrog and a Batman-esque character, a rich character, Iron Man, if you want to use him, is that LeapFrog's stupid. He's not a good person.
To be rich. It's not enough of a power.
Not a good person and not very smart. So it's not just rich gets you to be a superhero. You also need other factors to be a good superhero. I really that shows here. But yeah, so LeapFrog sues the suit maker because his boots malfunctioned and burned him. Which we find out is because he put jet fuel in them instead of the necessary fuel, which Jen should have gone through a lot longer line of question before this.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like, oh, the suit's malfunctioned. You have a case. Great.
Yeah.
There's no research done.
No. Yeah, as I said, one of the favorite things about the show is seeing the world. One of my least favorite things is I don't think it's doing a great job portraying Jen as a legitimately good lawyer.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot that they could add to her character to show she knows what she's doing. And we're in episode 8, and I feel like that really hasn't happened yet.
But that's how they got Daredevil here. He shows up as a lawyer for the defense and makes his blind jokes as he always does, and as he always has and always will. He's very charming and like the way he delivers his lines always hit to me.
Yeah.
So it's great to see Charlie Cox in a MCU official role.
Yeah. And it does make me want to go back and watch Daredevil, the old seasons, and it gets me more excited for the Daredevil show that's coming down the road in the MCU. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was effective. This is an effective episode for Marvel's marketing in my book. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I know that this was kind of leaked, I would say, ahead of time, or it was discussed ahead of time, but to expect that Daredevil would be a kind of love interest to Jen. And so that's kind of what I was expecting going into this episode, so it didn't surprise me a whole lot. And honestly, actually, I think they make a great couple. They were playing off each other. He was actually like the only nice guy we've met so far.
Yeah. The only trustworthy nice guy.
Yeah.
Without a hidden agenda.
Yeah.
That we know of. I'm just kidding.
Daredevil's the true villain of the.
Yeah. Secretly this whole time.
But yeah, no, he was a good guy, like honest, like came out to her. Well, I guess she took off his mask, but like it wasn't a problem. It was just like, oh, okay. Like understand we have secret identities. I like that he ordered her an apple martini because it's bright green. Liked her for both her She-Hulk and Jen sides.
Mm-hmm.
It was I also, this I thought was kind of funny. And mostly because it's kind of like a flipping things on its head, but the walk of shame.
Yeah.
I thought that was a little funny.
Yeah.
It kind of had a little out of character, to be honest, but
yeah,
a little funny.
Yeah. It was unexpected. But
yeah. But no, it was great. His mustard and ketchup suit, just it's yellow and red, and it was a very mustardy yellow, but it looks good. I mean, it's a very original suit. They brought it in. I doubt they're going to bring that into his MCU appearances. I'm sure they're going to go more classic for that, to his red or the more well-known. But it was cool to kind of see that side of him. What do you think of the fight scene between She-Hulk and Daredevil?
I liked it. I feel like it played off of the differences between the characters very well. That like he's playing it smart and strategic and flipping around and playing to his strengths. And she's like, all right, I'm going to let you flip around and such. And then I'm just going to smash stuff to try and stop you. And so it's just like very different fight styles. I think both characters were very true to themselves in the way they were battling. And it also kind of showed, yeah, they didn't even have the same goals in the fight. Like, it wasn't just we have to fight each other. It was he's trying to catch someone. You're in the way. He's trying to get by you. And she was, I'm just trying to stop you. So I feel like a lot of the fights we've seen before have felt a little forced. Like, these two are seeing each other for the first time. We're going to have them fight because we need it. Or some of the movies, the fights weren't necessary because of a genuine conflict. This, it was two good guys that didn't have a conflict with each other. It was more of they had competing goals that just required them to kind of fight each other for a little bit. But the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, as a lawyer, she should know she's going to be held liable for a lot of these damages that she's creating here. Destroying cars, destroying the parking garage. And I like that he mentioned that. So, have you ever destroyed a parking garage before? She goes, ooh, yeah, I'll leave a note. I enjoyed the whole thing. Yeah, all their interactions in this episode, I think, were just really well done.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the very acrobatic side of Daredevil, which we've seen before a lot, but he knows he can't overpower her, so really his whole goal was just to get away.
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't, there's no way Daredevil could beat She-Hulk in a battle. One-on-one, he doesn't, I mean, yeah, he's quick, he could dodge her some and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the power levels difference between the two, significant. So he did a lot of dodging, running away, like hiding, like trickery kind of things of like where to go and stuff. So of course he was eventually going to lose, but I love that it was the clap The clap
Yeah.
was sound based that really hurt him. That she wouldn't have. She didn't know. She just got frustrated and did the clap because it just hits everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too, though. It hurt watching that happen because, like, as soon as she did it, I'm like, oh no. Oh, that's gonna be so painful for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the she gets in trouble. Suit maker does not want to make anything for her anymore. But it's fine. Eventually, they come back. He's making her suits again and everything. But we definitely see some a very light-hearted episode get the darkest I've seen a show go in a while. Pretty fast. Felt like so real so quickly at the gala.
Yeah.
And at first it was like, oh, haha, a little funny. Like she thought she was woman lawyer of the year and was the only one, but really it's a whole bunch of women lawyers of the year, and like kind of like downplaying that as like it was like, oh, just another time that she's getting put down where she doesn't think she's being put down. But then when Hulk King posts, it was like that 180 on the feeling and emotions that was going into that show.
Yeah. Yeah. It was certainly interesting. She's wanting to take a moment to thank her family, which points out the fact that her family is there. And then they pull that where they are showing things on the screen that you don't want your family seeing. You don't want anyone seeing, especially your family. And she lost it briefly. I mean, not in the ways that we've seen Hulk lose it in the past, but she smashed screens. She smashed through a wall. It didn't appear that she hurt anyone really, but she lost control. And
Well, I'd argue on that.
all right, go
I'd
for it.
say she lost control in the same way in anyone losing control. She didn't lose control in the way a Hulk loses control, is what I would say, because it's a different amount of destruction that's possible when you have like the strength. But I wouldn't say that the losing it was outside the realm of a normal person. Whereas like a Hulk, when Hulk loses it, he's on destroy everything mode, no control at all. Whereas
Yeah.
she was still very controlled in what she was doing, but very upset, very like rage filled, but
Mhm.
not out of control.
So okay, so I feel like I agree that it's not Hulk level of out of control. That yeah, she didn't rampage, she didn't try and hurt people. But I do feel like she still lost control. And yes, other people, normal people, can lose control in that way too. So it's not that she only lost control because she's a Hulk. But you see her looking at the screen, like getting ready, but it almost seemed like she was hesitating for even hitting the screen. But then she just had to hit that screen. And she sees someone and she's just filled with rage. And instead of thinking rationally, she charges through a wall to get that person. Would Jennifer Walters have acted in that way? Would Jennifer Walters have punched the screen? I don't think she would have. Would she have tried to charge through the crowd? Clearly not trying to charge through the wall, but charge through a crowd to try and catch that person? I'm not sure she would have. So I think she still lost control, just not Hulk level. But
Mm.
I mean, it really comes down to how is this going to play moving forward? How are they going to expand from this? Because that's where it ended.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intent of Hulk King was to make the public think she's out of control.
Yeah.
And I think that goal of making the public think that she's out of control succeeded there. But I would say she's 100% justified in destroying the screen because of what was happening there. Going after the bad guy as a superhero, crashing through a wall. We've seen superheroes do that all the time. All of that actually doesn't seem that out of superhero character to me. All of
Yeah.
that seemed fine for being a superhero, going after a bad guy. it's just because it was directly targeted at her and saying terrible things about her that the public perception of like, oh, a Hulk is now going crazy could happen.
Yeah, I agree that the actions were in this universe very fitting for a superhero. I mean, like we said, she just smashed an entire parking garage
She
trying to stop Daredevil.
she's
So,
no U.S. agent crashing in someone's head with a shield when he's
right,
raged out.
right, nothing that level.
Yeah,
He lost control a lot more than she did in this episode. I guess I'll be curious to see where they go with this. Whether they play this as her losing control in the sense of not having control over herself, or just losing control as in getting really angry and acting out on her anger. I will be curious. She did have kind of a little more of a Hulk face to her, I feel like, when she was doing these things. So I don't know. Maybe her anger is just harder to control in a Hulk form. I don't know. Or it could be in the very first episode when she was blacking out and waking up in other places. It could have been another personality that just doesn't want to come out often, and it was forced out in this episode. There's a lot of directions this can still go in the last episode next week. I guess we'll find out.
I also like, and I forget exactly where it was, but they made a joke about a Red Hulk also.
Yes,
and I loved that.
Yeah, when she was like, "Why is this episode still running?"
Oh, that's right.
We just had a very satisfying conclusion to this episode. Why are we still going? Oh, we're doing the Gala scene? Is this where there's some twist? Is there another Hulk but he's red? Yeah.
They were really calling out fans and people like us who theorize and think, oh, what's gonna happen is like they're getting Hulk blood or they're gonna create a Red Hulk, and like basically her calling us out, being like, oh, it's still going. Does that mean that all like basically doing the theory crafting that everyone else does as well in world? And then like I feel like this show, because the fourth wall breaks and also the content, what they talk about in it, and how very real world based like sexism and misogyny and being a woman in a professional field and dating and everything, that like it's very like real feeling to some extent, where I mean it's very much fake and stuff, but they throw in all these elements of like, and they're so in tuned with how things would happen, because like it feels like this show could have been edited the week before it came out based on the content in it. Whereas like they predicted that, because people are kind of maybe a little bit predictable at this point, but that these kind of theories would happen, and that also that the show would get a lot of flack for it being about a woman and the men all being bad guys and everything like that. And I kind of threw all of that in to be like the biggest twist at the end of this episode, with things being thrown up. And I was like, those things being said on that presentation during the gala were almost like perfect replications of things I've seen in threads about the show.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so predictable that they were able to put in a show that they edited and had ready months ago.
Right.
That's like, they're very well in tune with what it's really like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the fact that they called that specific piece out, like simultaneously, it's really funny because it called out the people who are saying maybe Red Hulk is coming, but now I feel like it can't be. So in a way, it was also kind of confirming that it's not going to be that.
Yep.
So they were simultaneously kind of poking fun at the theorists while also fueling the theorists. Being like, yeah, it's not what you think.
Yeah, if she had said, "Oh, is one of my cousin's old allies / enemies going to show up?" then we'd be like, "Oh, well, I guess our leader theory is gone."
But no, that still lives on.
Got one more episode to find out.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be, I guess the Josh character is kind of the big bad for now until we see who that person pulling his strings are. And I feel like we may not see that until maybe an after credits of the final episode.
So I don't think he is the big bad. They're like the biggest bad right now. I mean, clearly we're going to see who it is in the final episode, where she should see somebody higher up pulling the strings in the final episode. I'm forgetting his name, but the one who called her a specimen that has now shown up multiple
Yeah,
times.
the spear collector guy.
Yeah, so I feel like they are very clearly they're calling us out for being predictable. I'm calling this part out. I'm going to say it's predictable, and then we'll see if it actually is. But he has shown up multiple times in situations where it does not make sense for him to be there at all. It doesn't progress the story. It doesn't progress the jokes, and those are the two reasons that they're progressing things in this. Unless there's some build up for something in this last episode. He was at the gala. She saw him at the gala. He reached out to her about to show off the spear and got very rejected shortly before all this happened. He's clearly in this a lot more than just a creepy guy. And so I'm kind of guessing that he is the big bad. I think he's going to end up being maybe Hulk King, but the one pulling the strings here. And so my leader theory is still alive, but I'm thinking maybe that'll be the end credit scene, the connection there, and the big bad for this show will end up being Creepy Guy. That's his name. Creepy Guy. That's his name, right? I'm pretty sure that's in the credits. You find him as just Creepy Guy.
I mean, he has a lot of money.
Yes.
He is in black market dealings, basically, if he got the spear. He's not a good guy, as we've seen it over and over again. He could just be a running gag. But,
yeah,
I mean, I could see it. I could see him being the person, maybe the person who is in charge of the intelligentsia network or something. I could see that being the case, especially as like maybe doing the whole like a guy who gets rejected once and then becomes obsessed with taking that person down for rejecting him.
Yeah, could be. But that's my prediction as of this point, just with how many appearances he has now had. Gotta mean something. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Usually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that may be everything that I wanted to talk about. Just want to make sure.
I do have one more thing.
Okay.
Thank you, She-Hulk, for bringing up the Sokovia Accords.
No.
For bringing that to rest and saying outright that those have been repealed, that they are gone. Because it's just been a lingering question where like it was in Civil War and it was so huge. And it kind of felt like at the end of Civil War, Sokovia Accords had gone through and you either followed it or you're kind of an outlaw. But then so much else happened in the world that it just didn't get talked about.
After the blip. I think it must have been repealed during or after the blip because we know up until the blip it was a thing because people were being locked up still for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we know for sure that's to rest. Superheroes have secret identities again.
Which means Captain America was right all along.
There we go.
We've got the answer to Civil War. Iron Man was in the wrong. Captain America was in the right. End of story. No, you cannot challenge it. It's written into law now.
And is that how law works in the MCU? It could be, actually. With some of how the show goes. But yeah. So I wanted to call out the fact that was very directly said in a passing comment, but very directly said in a very clear way. It was good I could stop wondering about that.
Oh, I also liked the henchmen versus goons conversation.
Yeah.
Because it was very like, even though it was like a joke kind of talking about it, it did kind of set like some of them they're people. They're still people, but some of them are just hired guns basically and others care.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, all right. And then you go to the lily pad and you see that they're all just goons. None of them actually care. They're just there for a paycheck. He's like, well, that makes sense because the guy's a jerk and just has a lot of money.
And I did like that. Yeah, it wasn't just this faceless enemy. Marvel likes having this faceless, endless enemy, like this something you can fight a whole bunch of, and it's okay for you just to fight a big group of them. And I like that Daredevil, put a a name and a characteristic and personified them and said, it's not just an enemy, any enemy to fight. You have to look at them as people and figure out what their motivations are to see exactly what it is you're fighting and bringing that level, that depth to the conflict. Yeah, I liked it.
And the math part, I thought it was funny. It takes about 15 seconds per person. Then she's like, that's going to take 30 minutes. And he's like, that's not how the math works.
Yeah. And she stuck to it. She's like, I don't care. I'm sticking to the 30 minutes.
No, it was good. I would love to see him more interact with Jen in the future, even though we won't get it this season. Maybe they'll bring him back for future seasons.
Yeah, or maybe they'll bring her back into his season.
Very true.
Find out. So that's episode 8. We have one episode left. Do you have any final thoughts of how this episode went, how you liked this episode?
Yeah, I liked this episode a lot. May or may not be my favorite. There's been a lot of episodes now, and there's been a few really good gems within there. I really liked Daredevil being in this. It was the most serious of the episodes, only in the last couple of minutes. But like, I felt it when they made that reveal. I was like, oh, that is the worst thing. Like, you could show someone up there beating her to a pulp, and I would felt less than that scene. So I think this episode is very effective in showing us what the stakes are more fully, of like how, like, yeah, it's not just internet trolls. It's real what is being done, for real, meaning like in the show real, not our life real. But yeah, so I mean, it was an intense episode. It was a very fun episode. Charlie Cox shows that he's still got it. Still, he's the the Daredevil we should have always had. Sorry, I'm still also thinking about the Deadpool reveals we got over the last 2 weeks. So, right. But yeah, he's a Daredevil to end all Daredevils. Like, he's a perfect Daredevil in my book. So, I'm loving it. I'm excited for the last episode. I feel like they're going to give us quite a cliffhanger, because there's no way they can fit enough in half an hour for me to feel fully satisfied. So I feel like it's got to move pretty quickly, and it's either going to not show us the big bad until the after, like the big bad, until the after credits, or if they do show the big bad, it's going to be very brief, and it's not going to be a conclusion. It's more of just introducing the big bad and they get away.
Yeah, I'd agree with, I think, everything that you said. I feel like early on in this season, a lot of our reviews, we were a little like, where's this show going? We weren't sure what it was. We weren't sure where it was trying to head. And I feel like the show found its footing, or maybe we just figured out what the show is. But yeah, the last few episodes, I really feel like the show has gone in a great direction, and has improved so much. I feel like there's so much left on the table as well. And it may be a case of they spent a long time building up and they have to rush things in the last episode, or it could just be that they didn't have a lot that they felt they needed to have wrapping it up. It wouldn't take her a lot, and so it's going to fit in that half hour. I guess we'll find out. I still feel like the courtroom scenes are the show's weakness, which is so sad to say. I feel like they just couldn't really. It's showing that they couldn't find a way to make the courtroom scenes work in a believable way for these characters. But her being a lawyer is working. And so the fact that they were having that in the conflict between her as a lawyer and her as a superhero, and trying to find that balance, is working very well, and the show is doing well there. But yeah, I liked this episode too. I feel like Daredevil added a lot to it, being able to see that dynamic, that interaction. I mean, I liked some of the prior special guests that they've had. Wong, everyone loves Wong. The show even tells us everyone loves Wong. But Daredevil fit. He really fit as a character to have included here. So yeah, I agree. I think this was a really good episode, and I look forward to seeing how they wrap things up next week.
Now, one thing we didn't talk about what may or may not happen next episode. Do you think we're going to see any more with Hulk and him flying off into space?
I don't.
Okay, me either.
I think that is done, and it's just going to remain a cliffhanger. I feel like they need the show to focus. They've mentioned multiple times this is her show, and she's and like honestly, that's a big part of the show is her trying to get the respect that she deserves, her trying to get the credit that she deserves, her trying to prove herself, not just as a superhero, but as a person, as a lawyer, and the fact that this is her show, I feel like it would take a little bit away from it if, in the conclusion, in the last episode where she's supposed to reach a good conclusion, a good place of value for herself, if they flash over to her more famous cousin and we get to see what he's doing. Maybe an end credit scene, but I don't know. I kind of hope that they leave it on a just leave that storyline, let us wonder about it, and focus on her.
Same. I completely agree. And then, do you think Titania is going to show up?
Yes.
Okay, same.
I do. The way they left that was Titania came back and challenged her again and lost even more horribly than she did before and went running away crying. That's not typically that's the build up to a supervillain. That is not where you leave a nemesis.
Right.
It feels like that's an origin story from her making a poor decision. I definitely think she'll be back in this last episode.
Great. Anything else you wanted to add before we do our final wrap up?
Nope, that's it for me. This is a great episode, and we're close to the end.
Yeah, one more episode, and of course we'll have another discussion after that one, and for any other Disney Plus shows in the future. I know that we are both. We're going to be watching the Werewolf by Midnight, taking a look at that, seeing if there's any videos we want to make on that as well. So you can stay tuned. We have theory videos that come out every week. And we have our discussion videos whenever there is a show on Disney Plus.
Thanks for watching.